President of the Republic of Panama, for chairing this session, underscoring the profound importance and the urgency with which the international community views the challenges to global maritime security. I also thank Mr. Dominguez, IMO Secretary General, Mr. Morales, CEO of Panama Canal Authority, and Mr. Uruquez, Secretary General of Interpol, for their contribution, which highlights the multifaceted nature of the challenges at hand and the necessity for comprehensive, integrated solutions. For Somalia, and indeed for the entire African continent, the security and sustainable management of our maritime domain are matters of deep significance. Somalia stands as a nation possessing one of the longest coastlines along the mainland of Africa. The security of the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea are especially vital, not just for my country and our neighbors, but for the entire global community. These waters are essential arteries of international commerce, connecting continents and carrying a significant share of the world's trade. Any threat to their stability has direct repercussions for global supply chains, economic growth, and international peace. In that regard, I would like to make the following 3 points. First, capacity building and technology transfer are paramount. It's widely recognized that efforts to address maritime threats are most effective when coastal states possess necessary capacities and capabilities, since they have the primary responsibility. It is essential that such cooperation continues to be strengthened while fully respecting the sovereignty and the leadership of coastal states. Many countries, particularly in Africa, continue to require sustained support to strengthen maritime law enforcement, surveillance, and judicial processes. We underscore the importance of tailored training, access to advanced technologies, and investment in human and institutional resources. The African Union's 2050 Integrated Maritime Strategy and the Lomé Charter clearly articulates such priorities, serving as important roadmaps for national and regional resilience. Second, we believe effective maritime security requires coordinated and holistic approach to address the root causes. It's imperative to recognize that maritime security is closely linked to sustainable development on land. Poverty and unemployment often serve as significant drivers pushing individuals, in particular the youth, towards criminal activities at sea. Coastal states continue to face an evolving area of risks and threats to maritime security. Among these, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing stands out as particularly significant and devastating impact on coastal communities, and is also considered as one of the root causes of sea piracy. This transnational crime not only depletes vital marine resources, but also causes severe degradation and lasting, often reversible damage to crucial ocean ecosystems. The pervasive nature of the IUU fishing exemplifies how environmental transgressions can directly translate into economic, international instability and security vulnerabilities, in particular for ocean-dependent nations. African Union's Blue Economy Initiative, which aims to foster sustainable livelihoods and responsible stewardship of marine resources, represents a critical avenue for addressing the underlying drivers of maritime insecurity. We encourage greater international support for these initiatives, which are vital for ensuring long-term stability in sea and on land. Third, upholding international law remains fundamental. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and other relevant instruments provide the legal foundation for the peaceful and cooperative use of our oceans. Respect for these obligations and for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states is essential for building trust and ensuring effective action. Somalia attaches great importance to the full and effective implementation of these frameworks and encourages continued international assistance for states working to develop and align national legislations accordingly. To conclude, Mr. President, my delegation reaffirms its commitment to working constructively with Security Council and the wider international community to realize the vision of safe, secure, and prosperous sea for all. I thank you.
Gracias,
I thank
honorable
the
representante
distinguished
de Somalia.
representative of Somalia
Doy la
for that
palabra
statement, and I now give the floor
Al embajador
to
de Grecia.
the Ambassador of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, allow me to commend Panama for convening this timely and important meeting, and to congratulate you, Your Excellency, President Mulino, for leading today's debate on maritime security, a cornerstone of the modern interconnected world, and a matter of high priority for both our countries. I also thank Secretary General of IMO, Mr. Dominguez, Mr. Vasquez Morales, CEO of the Panama Canal Authority, and Secretary General of Interpol, Mr. Urquiza, for their insightful contributions. Mr. President, threats to maritime security are multiplying. In addition to traditional threats, piracy, maritime terrorism, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, marine pollution, drug trafficking, and migrant smuggling, we now face emerging challenges such as hybrid threats and attacks on critical maritime infrastructure. These attacks violate freedom of navigation, disrupt global supply chains, jeopardize food and energy security, and endanger the lives of seafarers. As a global player in international shipping, Greece is particularly affected by maritime security threats. In the beginning of July, the bloody attacks on the Greek-owned commercial ships Magic Seas and Eternity Sea resulted in the death of 4 seafarers and the sinking of both ships, while at least 10 members of the crew are still being held hostage. Addressing these challenges requires robust international cooperation and the coordination of national, regional, and multilateral efforts. A secure maritime domain is essential not only for blue growth and energy security, but also for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and upholding international law. In this respect, I wish to highlight 4 points. First, as reaffirmed during the open debate on maritime security convened by Greece in May, comprehensive strategies are essential to address maritime threats effectively. This includes reinforced coordination at all levels, international, regional, and national, with active partnerships involving the private sector. Such cooperation must strengthen the resilience of global supply chains and critical infrastructure, including pipelines and submarine cables. Given the significant threat posed by human trafficking and migrant smuggling, including in the Mediterranean, where massive migratory flows are detected, international cooperation must address migration challenges in full respect of international law. It should also target illicit maritime activities, unsafe shipping practices, and some substandard vessels that threaten both safety and the marine environment. Second, innovation is key. Emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, can greatly enhance maritime security by improving monitoring, information sharing, and operational coordination, provided they are applied in full compliance with international law. Third, capacity building remains critical. Greece supports efforts by states and international organizations to strengthen law enforcement, promote safe and resilient ports, and address cybersecurity risks through the development of digital skills. Greece is actively engaged in the work of the IMO, contributing to the development of rules and standards and to improving capabilities to counter maritime security risks. The European Union, as a global security provider, is implementing its maritime security strategy through concrete actions. Greece participates in EU naval operations Atalanta in the Northwest Indian Ocean, Aspides in the Red Sea, and Irini in the Mediterranean, all aimed at enhancing maritime security. Moreover, climate change and environmental degradation also carry serious security implications for the maritime domain, requiring urgent international attention. Finally, compliance with existing legal frameworks is paramount. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, remains the cornerstone of international maritime governance. Its central and universal role was reaffirmed during our May debate, underscoring that UNCLOS provides the comprehensive framework for addressing both traditional and emerging threats. In conclusion, Mr. President, Greece supports a strengthened role for the United Nations in addressing maritime security challenges. We see a clear need for more structured, coordinated and sustained UN engagement to counter these threats effectively. Maritime security will remain a priority for my delegation during our term on the Security Council. We are committed to keeping it high on the Council's agenda and to working with all partners to prevent and respond to threats, thereby maintaining international peace and security. I thank you.
Muchas gracias,
I
señor
thank
embajador de
the
Grecia.
Ambassador of Greece for that statement.
Damos la palabra
I
al
now
señor
give the
embajador
floor
de China
to the Ambassador
para
of
hacer un comentario.
China for a further statement.
谢谢主席。
Thank
我
you,
想对
President.
刚才美国代表
With regard to
刚才的
the
发言做一
statement
个
by
简单
the
的回应。
U.S. representative,
近一个
I would
时
like
期
to
以来，
respond. In recent
美国
times,
代表团
the
多
U.S.
次
delegation has
借各种
repeatedly
议题
used various
对中
issues
国进
to
行
make
无理指责
unwarranted
和抹黑，我们
accusations
对此
against
表
and
示
smear
强烈
China.
反对。
We firmly oppose this.
在此我想再次
Here,
强调，
I would like to
关于
re-emphasize
巴拿马
that
运河，
regarding the Panama
中方
Canal,
一贯
China
尊
has
重
always
巴拿马
respected
对运
Panama's
河的主
sovereignty
权，
of the canal
承认
and
巴拿马
recognizes
运河
the permanent
作为
neutrality
永
of
久
the
中
canal
立
as
国
an
际水道
international
的地位。
waterway.
美方
The United
炮制
States'
谎言、
fabrication of
无端
lies
攻
and
击中
groundless
国，
attacks against
无非
China are
是为
nothing
其
but a
控制
pretext
运河
for
制造借口。
seeking control of the
中方
canal.
坚决
China
反
firmly
对
opposes
经济胁迫
economic coercion
和霸
and
凌
bullying
行径，
practices
敦促美
and
方
urges the United
停止
States to stop
造谣生事。
fabricating rumors, lies, and creating trouble.
我还想指出，
I would also like to point out that
美国是迫害
it
南
is
海
the
和平稳
U.S.
定的
that is the biggest
最大
disruptor
搅
of
局者。
peace and stability in the South
美
China
方
Sea.
在南
The
海地
U.S.
区
has
部署
deployed
包
offensive
括陆
weaponry
基中程
in the
导弹在
region,
内的
including
进攻性
land-based
武器，
intermediate-range
频繁
missiles,
派遣
has
大规模
repeatedly
舰机
dispatched
到
large-scale
南海
naval
搞
and
军
air
事侦
forces
察
to
和演
conduct
习，
reconnaissance and
在别
military
国的家
exercises
门
in
口
the South China
耀
Sea,
武扬威，
and has sought to
横冲
flex
直
its
撞，
military muscles
无
and
非
run amok
是
at
想
the
把南
very
海搅
doorstep
乱，
of other states,
服
with a
务
clear
美国的
objective of
地
creating
缘战
instability
略
in the
司令。
region to advance its own geopolitical
我还
agenda.
想特别指出的是，
I also would like
美
to
国
point
的
out
霸
that
权和
the
冷战
U.S.
思维、
hegemony,
单
Cold War
边主义
mentality,
行径
and unilateral
在
actions
正在
are
急剧地
gravely
推升全球
exacerbating
海上安全
risks
风险。
to global maritime security.
美国
The
至今
United
未
States
加入
has yet to
联合
accede
国海洋
to
法公约，
UNCLOS
不愿履行
and
相关义
refuses
务，
to fulfill the obligations
无视
thereunder.
国际法
It
和
disregards
国际
international law
海底
and
管
the
理局的
warnings
警
of
告，
the ISA
单
by
方面决
unilaterally
定开
deciding
发
to
国际
exploit
海底
international
资源，
seabed
抢夺
resources,
全
thereby
人类共同
appropriating
财
the
产，
common heritage of humanity.
公然
It has
恫吓巴拿
openly
马运河
threatened the normal
苏
operation
黎
of
世运河
the
的正常
canal
运作，
of the Panama Canal and the Suez
肆意
Canal
挑
and
战
has
他
wantonly
国主权，
challenged the sovereignty of other states.
将涉海事务
It has
泛安全化，
Securitized
阻碍海上基础
maritime
设施建
issues
设，
obstructed the development
破
of
坏
maritime
产业链
infrastructure and
供应
undermined
链
the
的稳定。
stability of industrial and supply
我们敦
chains.
促美方
We call
深
on
刻
the
反思，
United States.
切实承担
We
起
urge the United
大
States
国
to
应
pursue
尽的
some
责任。
serious soul-searching and to assume in good faith their responsibilities as a major power. Thank you, Mr. President.
Gracias, señor embajador de China.
I thank the Ambassador of China.
Como quiera que ha mencionado a mi país y al canal,
Since you've mentioned my country and
simplemente
the
quiero
canal,
destacar
I simply wanted to stress
que la neutralidad, como dije en mis palabras,
the neutrality, as I said
Es
in
la
my
única
statement.
y la mejor
Neutrality
defensa
is
de
the
nuestro canal
only
ante
and the
cualquier
best
amenaza
defense of our canal to any
particular o global.
threat, be it
Por
specific
supuesto,
or global in nature.
El ejercicio
Of
soberano
course, the sovereign
de nuestro
exercise
país,
by our
tanto en la
country,
propiedad como en la administración,
in terms of the ownership of
resguardada
the
y
canal and the
tutelada por un
administration of the
tratado
canal, is
multilateral
overseen by a
que es el
multilateral
que está en
treaty,
vigencia
which
en este momento.
is currently in
Así
force.
que, como presidente de Panamá, dejo
So, as President of
claro
Panama, I would like to make it clear,
esos señalamientos para
make
que
this
no se
clear,
preste a malentendidos por no
so there are
aclarar.
not
Gracias.
any misunderstandings through my lack
Damos
of
la palabra
clarification. I'd now like to give
ahora
the floor
A su excelencia,
to
señor
His
Tanmaya,
Excellency Mr.
Lal,
Tanmaya Lal,
secretario de
Secretary
Occidente
West
del Ministerio de
at
Relaciones
the
Exteriores del
Ministry
Gobierno de
for
la India.
External Affairs of the Government of India.
Thank you, Mr. President. We congratulate the Republic of Panama for holding the presidency of the UN Security Council for this month. And we would like to thank you, Your Excellency, President Molino, for hosting and presiding over this important debate. This discussion builds upon the debates hosted by Greece in May and by India during our Security Council presidency in 2021. Maritime security is our collective challenge and demands international collaboration. Given the critical importance of the sea routes for global trade, energy supplies, communication cables, traditional and non-traditional threats, and our own long-standing maritime tradition, India, as one of the world's largest economies, has strong stakes and interest in this subject. India's maritime trading tradition goes back millennia. Ancient Indian port cities such as Dholavira, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and Lothal were trading with distant lands via the maritime route 5,000 years ago. Indians have traded to their east and west with Africa, Europe, Southeast Asia, and beyond, across the Indian Ocean and Bay of Bengal. Cultural exchange and diaspora traveled on ocean waves. Today, India, with a coastline of more than 11,000 kilometers and nearly 1,300 offshore islands and islets, has an exclusive economic zone spread over nearly 2.3 million square kilometers. India shares maritime boundaries with 7 nations. There are 12 major ports, 200 smaller ports, and nearly 30 shipyards on the Indian coast, continuing the long-standing shipbuilding tradition. India is also the third largest supplier of seafarers to the global maritime industry. A large section of our population resides close to the coasts, and millions of Indians derive their livelihood from the ocean economy. The scale of maritime safety and security challenges, as also the urgent importance of economic stability and environmental sustainability concerns for India, therefore, is huge. The twin interlinked concerns of security and prosperity provide the basis for India's vision for maritime security, the Mahasagar, which is the Hindi word for ocean, which was elaborated by Prime Minister Modi as mutual and holistic advancement for security and growth across regions. India's approach to maritime security draws upon the following 5 principles: removal of barriers from legitimate maritime trade, peaceful settlement of disputes as per international law, jointly addressing natural disasters and threats from non-traditional actors, preservation of maritime environment and resources, encouraging responsible maritime connectivity. Recognizing the collective nature of the challenges and the required joint response, we engage with our partners, especially from the Global South, in several ways. And these are joint patrolling for their EEZ surveillance, supplementing humanitarian assistance and disaster relief measures, conducting search and rescue and evacuation operations in various emergencies, including oil spills and fires, assisting anti-drug trafficking and anti-piracy operations, where we have worked with a range of partners, conducting hydrographic surveys to facilitate navigation safety. The Indian Navy, in addition to its role as a net security provider, is also active in the Indo-Pacific region, assisting with security and HADR operations, and is among the first responders in the region. India is a founding member of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA, and the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, IONS, and is an observer at the Indian Ocean Commission. We also engage with a range of partners at other formats, such as the Djibouti Code of Conduct, DCOC, the Contact Group on Illicit Maritime Activities, and the BIMSTEC. Operational coordination is achieved through joint exercises and coordinated patrols, Africa-India Key Maritime Engagement, ASEAN-India Maritime Exercises, the exercise Milan hosted by India, IONS Chiefs Conclave, and the exercise Malabar. India and the European Union have conducted joint naval activities in the Gulf of Guinea to reinforce maritime security. In a unique initiative, an Indian naval ship recently served as an Indian Ocean ship, Sagar, which sailed with nearly 50 crew from 9 partner countries from the Indian Ocean region, undertaking joint maritime security activities. India's Information Fusion Center for the Indian Ocean region focuses on enhancing maritime domain awareness and coordination through information sharing and cooperation with partners. It has been included as a voluntary reporting center in the best management practices by the IMO. IFC-IOR hosts liaison officers from 14 partner nations. An AI-powered digital platform called the eSamudra will be launched later this year for real-time monitoring and smarter decision-making to enable more efficient and transparent maritime governance. Last month, India launched Samudra Prashet, its indigenously built pollution control vehicle, highlighting our commitment to maritime environmental protection and sustainable practices. India's ongoing work on a deep ocean mission will contribute to understanding of deep sea ecosystems, contributing to sustainable fisheries and biodiversity conservation. India remains committed to promote a free, open, and rules-based maritime order in accordance with the principles of UNCLOS. Genuine international cooperation is needed to meet the collective challenges to maritime security and prosperity. As a responsible maritime power, India stands ready to continue to contribute to these joint efforts. Thank you, Mr. President.
Gracias, señor viceministro.
I
de
thank
India.
the Vice Minister.
Cedo la palabra al
I
representante
now
de
give the floor
Indonesia.
to the representative of Indonesia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Indonesia commends the Republic of Panama for convening this important debate and warmly welcomes His Excellency President Jose Raul Mulino. We also thank the briefers for their valuable insights. Since time immemorial, the oceans have been humanity's lifeline, connecting nations, powering economies, and sustaining livelihood. Yet today, the maritime domain is increasingly under siege, with threats ranging from transnational crimes to environmental degradation and heightened geostrategic rivalries. Business as usual is no longer an option. It is in this context that Indonesia wishes to underscore 3 key calls to action. First, recommit to the rule of law as our anchor. International law, especially the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, is the foundation of order and peaceful conduct of all parties at sea. It is our collective safeguard against disorder that could pose threats to international peace and security. We call upon all Council members to reaffirm their pledge to uphold UNCLOS. This means resolutely rejecting all unilateral actions that undermine its authority, not just in principle, but in practice. Second, cultivate the spirit of cooperation at sea. Preventing our oceans from becoming arenas of strategic rivalry and possible entry points for conflicts requires a fundamental mindset change. The sea must serve as bridges for dialogue, not front lines for power projection. Regional frameworks such as the ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific offer a clear path towards preventive diplomacy to ensure that our oceans serve as zones of peace and collaboration, not confrontation, by promoting areas of cooperation, fostering coordination, delivering collective responses to transboundary challenges, and reinforcing international law. We therefore urge all member states, particularly members of the Council, to champion this change of mindset by fully aligning maritime engagement with the principles of mutual trust, transparency, and self-restraint. Third, strengthen inclusive maritime governance. Maritime security is not just about deterring threats. It is about building resilience based upon building trust. Technology and innovation are a critical enabler of resilience, trust building, and mutual progress. Partnership in such areas as satellite-based surveillance to artificial intelligence can enhance monitoring, improve early warning, facilitate joint efforts in addressing transnational organized crimes, and support sustainable ocean management. This in turn serves as a powerful tool to prevent conflicts. We thus encourage greater international cooperation to promote innovation in ways that empower all nations, particularly developing countries, to build better their resilience in addressing emerging challenges. Mr. President, Indonesia stands ready to navigate forward with all partners toward ensuring peaceful, sustainable, just, and resilient oceans for humanity. Thank you.
Muchas gracias a la delegación de Indonesia.
Thank you very much to the
Le damos la palabra
delegation
a
of
la
Indonesia, and we now
delegación
give the
de
floor to the
Egipto.
representative of Egypt.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. بداية
Thank you, Mr.
أتوجه
President.
لسيادتكم
At the
بالتهنئة
outset,
على
I would
تولي
like to
بنما
congratulate
رئاسة
you
المجلس لهذا الشهر.
Panama's accession
ومع
to the
إدراكنا
presidency of the
للأهمية
Council
التي
of
توليها
this
بنما
month.
لمسألة الأمن البحري في
We
قناة
are
بنما، فإننا ندرك أيضا أن مسألة الأمن
aware of the
البحري هي
importance of this
شاغل
matter for
عالمي
Panama,
عابر
particularly
القارات
for the
والمناطق
Panama
الجغرافية.
Canal.
ومن هنا نتوجه بالشكر
We know that this
لرئاسة بنما
issue is
على
also
اختيار
of
هذا
importance
الموضوع
to
وعقد
different
هذا
other
النقاش
countries.
الهام
So we
والمحوري
thank you
في
once
هذه
again
اللحظة
for
التي يواجه فيها
choosing
العالم
this
تحديات متنامية
detailed
للأمن
theme,
البحري.
particularly in
سيد
light of the
الرئيس،
fact
تشهد
that
المنظومة
the
الدولية
world is
تحديات
facing
متزايدة نتيجة
challenges in
لتعدد
the
وتتابع
maritime
الأزمات
security.
وإمعان بعض القوى بكل
The
أسف
world is
في التصرف
continuing to
باعتبارها
face
فوق
challenges due
القوانين
to the
والنظم،
proliferation of
وهو
crises
ما ألقى
and
بظلال سلبية على السلم والأمن،
the
بما في ذلك
conduct of
جهود
certain
تحقيق
powers
أمن
acting as though they
المنطقة
are above
البحرية
the
وحركة
law.
الملاحة الدولية، بما في ذلك جهود تحقيق أمن
This is
الملاحة
impacting
البحرية
international
في
peace and
منطقتنا.
security
وقد
and
طال ذلك
does
بدوره
so
مصالح
to
جميع
the
جميع
detriment
الشعوب دون
of
استثناء.
maritime
ويمثل احترام
traffic
مبادئ
and
التعهدية والعرفية
waterways.
وقانون البحار،
It
بما في
affects
ذلك أحكام اتفاقية
everyone
الأمم
around the
المتحدة
world and
لقانون
their
البحار
interests.
التي هي
We
بمثابة
must
دستور
ensure
للبحار
respect
والمحيطات،
for
أحد ضمانات
treaty-based
تحقيق
and
الأمن
customary
البحري، بما
principles of
يعني
international law,
احترام المبادئ
particularly
الواردة في
UNCLOS,
الاتفاقية،
since it
بما
is
فيها
the
الأحكام الملزمة
constitution of
للجميع
the
المتصلة
oceans and
بحرية
the
الملاحة
seas. It
وقواعد
is a
تعيين الحدود
safeguard
البحرية.
for maritime
وتؤمن
security.
مصر أن أمن
We should
الملاحة
therefore
البحرية
ensure the
منفعة
respect for this
عامة
convention,
عالمية
particularly in
ترتبط
terms
بالاستقرار
of
الاقتصادي العالمي
maritime
والتنمية
freedom
المستدامة
and the delimitation
وصون
of
السلم
maritime
والأمن
boundaries.
الدوليين. ويتعين
We
مضاعفة
believe
الجهود
that
الرامية
maritime
لتحقيق الأمن
security
البحري من
is
خلال
a
العمل المستدام على
global public
المحاور
good for the
الثمانية.
entire world, which guarantees
قيام
economic
مجلس الأمن الدولي في
stability
ضمان
and
الالتزام
sustainable
الكامل
development around
بمحددات
the world.
القانون
I'd like
الدولي
to
وقرارات
highlight the
مجلس
following
الأمن، وفي
points.
مقدمة
The
ذلك
Security
أحكام اتفاقية
Council
الأمم المتحدة
must
لقانون
ensure
البحار
full
وجميع الاتفاقيات
adherence with
التي
international
تنظم
law
العمل
and
في
its
الممرات البحرية
resolutions, as well as
الاستراتيجية،
all
وبما يكون حرية
conventions
الملاحة
governing
وسلامة
this
المرور في
matter.
الممرات
This
والمياه
will
الدولية دون
guarantee
تسييس. ثانيا، تعزيز
freedom
أطر
of
وآليات التنسيق
navigation
على
without
الصعيدين الدولي
politicization.
والإقليمي،
Second, we
ودعم
must
برامج بناء
promote
القدرات وتطوير
international
أنظمة
and
الإنذار
regional
المبكر
coordination
ودفع الشراكة بين
mechanisms,
القطاعين العام والخاص في المجال
promote
البحري
capacity
لمواجهة
building
التحديات
and
المشتركة والتي تشمل
public
عمليات
private
القرصنة، السطو
partnerships.
المسلح، الاتجار
This in
بالمخدرات
order
والأسلحة
to
والبشر،
ensure that we can
والصيد
address
غير
different
المشروع
challenges such
والتلوث
as
البحري
piracy,
والاستغلال غير
armed
القانوني
robbery,
للموارد الطبيعية،
drugs
واستخدام
trafficking,
الممرات
arms
البحرية
trafficking,
للتحايل
human
على
trafficking,
العقوبات،
illegal fishing,
إضافة إلى
marine
مخاطر
pollution,
الهجمات السيبرانية
and the
التي تستهدف
exploitation
البنية
of
التحتية البحرية وغيرها من
waterways
الأنشطة
to
الإجرامية.
circumvent sanctions, cyber
ثالثاً،
attacks, and other
الاستثمار
criminal
في أنظمة
activities.
المراقبة المتقدمة وتقنيات
Third,
التتبع للكشف عن الجرائم
investing
البحرية
in
ومنعها والتصدي لها،
surveillance,
مع أخذ
monitoring,
بعين
and
الاعتبار
tracking
التحديات
technologies
المرتبطة بالتغيرات المناخية والبيئية التي
prevent
تزيد من التهديدات
maritime
التي
crimes, as
تواجه
well
أمن
as to
الملاحة
address
البحرية.
other challenges related to
ونؤكد في
climate
هذا
change.
الخصوص أن تقاسم التكنولوجيا
These
المتقدمة
worsen
بشكل
the
منصف
threats
سيمكن
to
جميع الدول وخاصة الدول النامية
peace,
من حماية
the
مجالاتها
peace
البحرية
threats
بما
to
سيخدم جهود
maritime
تحقيق
security.
السلم
We
والأمن
must
الدولي.
protect technology, particularly for developing countries, and to ensure international peace and security. 4, we should address the root causes of crises, taking into account the nature, history, and realities of each geographical region, so as to settle conflicts in a just and irreversible manner. The ordeal in the Middle East is ongoing, particularly with regard to the Red Sea insecurity following the inhumane Israeli war on Gaza. And the maritime corridors have been used by non-state actors, sapping the freedom of navigation and supply chains. All of this has further undermined the Palestinian cause. This is an unjustified, illogical war. Navigation in the Suez Canal has further been affected, causing losses amounting to around $7 billion in 2024. However, Egypt has maintained the Suez Canal's vital role. We have made efforts to ensure de-escalation in our region, and we'd like to stress 2 points. First, any initiatives relating to maritime security and development in the Red Sea must be implemented in close consultation with coastal states, since they are those that are best positioned to understand the region's dynamics. Second, restoring safe navigation in the Red Sea is important and crucial for the region. It would involve an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the unimpeded delivery of humanitarian aid, the release of hostages and detainees, and the end of occupation and displacement, as well as the end of the use of Palestinian lives as currency. We must ensure respect for the sovereignty of Red Sea countries. To conclude, we support all sincere efforts aimed at safeguarding vital maritime security, the primacy of international law. We must ensure that we maintain free maritime routes. Egypt, as a responsible member of the international community, will promote cooperation and stability for all. Thank you. I thank the representative of Egypt, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Philippines congratulate Panama for assuming the presidency of the Council. We're honored by your presence, and thanks our briefers for their insights. As an archipelagic state and a maritime nation, the Philippines considers maritime security as a top national policy priority. We understand maritime security as a cross-cutting concern and an integral element of the UN peace and security architecture. We hope that this open debate, like the one led by Greece in May, will pave the way not only for enhancing international cooperation on maritime security, but also to re-examining efforts to address security risk with high impact on people. Our concept of maritime security has always underscored the nexus between maritime security and marine environment protection, encompassing not only transnational crimes, constructive management of situation at sea, upholding international law, particularly UNCLOS, but also IUU fishing, marine pollution, biodiversity loss, climate change, and other emerging and developing threats. At home, we strengthen national frameworks and cooperation. In our region, we partner with other states to combat transnational crimes in the maritime domain, including through a trilateral arrangement with neighbors. We close criminal corridors, fight piracy, build capacities, share intelligence, and counter terrorist travel. We take part in the Regional Cooperation Agreement on combating piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia, and are honored that the Philippines has been re-elected as chairperson of its Information Sharing Center Governing Council. Through joint exercises and cooperation, we reinforce capacity and response, including in maritime domain awareness, and contribute to regional stability. As the world's leading supplier of seafarers, we champion human rights at sea in cooperation with all stakeholders. seafarers must be aware of their right to refuse to sail in dangerous areas. We ensure protection of our seafarers' welfare and assist them in distress. But security at sea cannot be separated from the health of the sea. Environmental challenges fuel instability. Geopolitical tensions exacerbate environmental harm, including in implementing legal frameworks for sustainable use and conservation. Rule of law remains the firm foundation to address these challenges. The UNCLOS is the constitution of the oceans. The BBNJ agreement is essential for the ocean, vital in protecting and managing resources in areas beyond national jurisdiction that border us in the South China Sea and in the Pacific. We recognize the synergies between UNCLOS and multilateral environmental agreements on issues within the ocean, climate, biodiversity, and nexus. We welcome the advisory opinion of both the ITLOS and the ICJ on climate change. Mr. President, maritime security concerns are most deeply felt by the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea and in the South China Sea. We recognize the significance of the South China Sea in international trade, similar to the Panama Canal, which is vital to global maritime commerce. We aspire for the South China Sea to be a sea of peace, security, stability, and prosperity. This is of fundamental interest to the international community. Regrettably, incidents that infringe on our rights and entitlements continue to occur in the South China Sea. We take part in the negotiations on a code of conduct in the South China Sea. We will not waver in advocating for adherence to international law, particularly the UN Charter, as amplified by the 1982 Manila Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of International Disputes, and by the UNCLOS, as clarified by the final and binding 2016 South China Sea Arbitration Award. We will continue to pursue effective diplomacy, leverage alliances, partnerships, and multilateralism, and build up domestic capabilities in securing our maritime domain. Maritime security is our shared responsibility and must be addressed comprehensively across the United Nations system for peace, for stability, and for generations to come. Thank you, Mr. President.
Muchas gracias. Honorable representante de
Thank you to
Filipinas,
the
cedo la
distinguished
palabra
representative of the Philippines, and I give the floor to the representative of Croatia.
la representación de Croacia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin by congratulating you on your presidency and thanking you for convening this timely debate. I thank the distinguished briefers for their presentations. Croatia aligns itself with a statement to be delivered by the European Union on behalf of its member states. In my national capacity, I would like to emphasize several key priorities. Maritime security is not merely a regional issue, it is a global imperative. While solutions are best pursued regionally, the threats we face transcend borders. As transnational crime escalates and environmental risks intensify, regional actors must be empowered to respond swiftly and collectively through interoperable protocols, joint training, and intelligence sharing platforms. To prevent illicit use of maritime routes, including piracy, we must strengthen cooperation among coastal states, port authorities, and naval forces. Legal frameworks must be enhanced. Real-time communication networks, including vulnerable undersea cables, pose significant risks to security, financial systems, and global connectivity. Targeted surveillance of trafficking corridors is essential to disrupt the logistics of illegal trade. Reinforcing the ISPS code is critical for robust and harmonized port safety. We must also embrace innovation. Satellite monitoring can trace vessel movements with precision. Artificial intelligence can detect patterns and anticipate threats before they materialize. Unmanned surface vessels and community-based early warning systems can transform maritime security into a proactive and predictive domain. Yet, this is not enough. Greater compliance with maritime law is needed. Strengthening the role of the IMO and linking adherence to international frameworks with trade privileges and development support will improve accountability. We must invest in proactive engagement, technical assistance, and capacity building. Real-time risk assessments, multinational rapid response units, and standardized contingency protocols can enhance crisis preparedness. Operational coordination and the exchange of best practices are key to more effective cooperation. Mr. President, securing our oceans also means protecting them. Sustainable ocean governments should balance the promotion of the blue economy with the preservation of fragile marine ecosystems. Ocean-dependent nations require climate-resilient infrastructure and fair access to maritime resources. The recent United Nations Conference on the Ocean has laid strong groundwork on this. As a Mediterranean coastal state, Croatia is deeply concerned by the deterioration of the global maritime order. This is most evident in the recent attacks in the Red Sea, which have disrupted international trade and endangered also Croatian seafarers, as we are one of Europe's leading nations in maritime personnel. Croatia prioritizes dialogue and cooperation, particularly with our southern neighbors. Our joint efforts must address maritime insecurity, irregular migration, and environmental degradation, while fostering synergy between regional and international organizations. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Madam Representative of Croatia. I give the floor to the representative of Austria.
Mr. President Molino, Excellencies, dear colleagues, Austria sincerely thanks Panama for convening this timely high-level debate and congratulates you on assuming the presidency of the Security Council. We align ourselves with the statement to be delivered by the European Union. Though landlocked, Austria is keenly aware that maritime security is a global concern. Disruptions at sea can reverberate across continents, threatening food and energy security, supply chains, and environmental sustainability. The impacts of illicit maritime crime know no borders. Allow me therefore to highlight 3 points. First, we reaffirm the centrality of international law, particularly the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, as the cornerstone of maritime governance. The erosion of international norms through the evasion of sanctions, illicit trafficking, or unlawful exploitation of marine resources undermines collective security. A rules-based maritime order is our first line of defense against transnational criminal networks. Second, we stress the need to enhance international cooperation in combating illicit maritime activities. Organized crime at sea, including the smuggling of arms, narcotics, and people, is increasingly sophisticated and transnational in nature. Austria supports efforts by the United Nations and regional organizations to improve monitoring, information sharing, and enforcement capacities. We commend the important role of UNODC and Interpol and encourage closer coordination across relevant UN bodies. Maritime insecurity is often rooted in vulnerabilities on land, weak governance, corruption, conflict, and poverty. Addressing maritime crime requires comprehensive and preventive strategies. This includes building institutions, strengthening legal frameworks, and enhancing regional cooperation mechanisms. We welcome innovative approaches, including the responsible use of new technologies, such as satellite monitoring and AI, to detect and disrupt criminal activity. Third, we must take into account the environmental dimension of maritime security. Activities such as illegal fishing and the dumping of toxic waste not only violate international law, but also jeopardize marine ecosystems and the livelihoods of millions. At the same time, climate change exacerbates existing security risks. Responses to maritime crime must be embedded in broader efforts to protect ocean health and promote sustainable development. Mr. President, Austria's candidacy for the Security Council for the term 2027-2028 is grounded in our commitment to international law, effective multilateralism, and a holistic approach to peace and security. These principles are essential to confronting emerging maritime threats and ensuring the safety and sustainability of our oceans. I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much to the representative of Austria. And we now give the floor to the representative of Brazil.
Mr. President, Brazil congratulates Panama on assuming the Council presidency and for convening this debate on maritime security. I also thank the briefers for their valuable insights. With one of the world's longest coastlines, Brazil's history, economy, and identity are deeply tied to the oceans. Guaranteeing a safe, open maritime space with governance based on international law
with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea at its center, is therefore a core national interest. That space, however, faces mounting pressure. Piracy, armed robbery, transnational crime, trafficking in arms and narcotics, and migrant smuggling are converging threats to maritime security, and they are being amplified by the malicious use of new technologies. Coastal communities whose livelihoods depend on the sea suffer the consequences of criminal activities, pollution, and resource depletion. These problems are particularly severe in areas such as the Red Sea, the Gulf of Guinea, and along Haiti's coast, whose maritime security has been compromised by gang violence, arms and drug trafficking, and lack of resources for maritime law enforcement. As we have repeatedly pointed out in this Council, there is a direct relation between peace and economic and social development. Addressing the root causes of maritime crime, investing in productive capacities, and combating poverty, hunger, and underdevelopment are as essential to addressing the issue as security considerations. Brazil sees three urgent priorities in this area. First, unwavering respect for international law and the law of the sea. States must meet their obligations under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, most of which are also part of customary international law. Second, practical cooperation and capacity building. Effective maritime domain awareness relies on real-time information sharing, interoperable surveillance tools, and the responsible integration of emerging technologies. Brazil is ready to deepen partnerships through the South Atlantic Zone of Peace and Cooperation, ZOPACAS, and through long-standing support to the navies and coast guards of the Gulf of Guinea. Brazil believes that the principles and values enshrined under ZOPACAS, which establishes the South Atlantic as a zone of peace, free of weapons of mass destruction, and preserved from foreign geopolitical disputes, send a relevant message to today's world. This message will be reinforced in 2026, when Brazil will host the 9th ministerial meeting to celebrate 40 years of ZOPACAS. We call on all countries, particularly in this Council, to comply with the relevant provisions of the ZOPACAS General Assembly resolutions, thus contributing to the peace, security, and development of the South Atlantic and globally. Third, we need a comprehensive approach that links security to sustainable maritime practices, protecting critical undersea and port infrastructure, strengthening port resilience, enhancing the digital skills, and countering cyber threats are mutually reinforcing steps. Mr. President, oceans governed by law and cooperation are essential for international peace and security and prosperity. Brazil therefore urges all member states to renew their commitments to the law of the sea and the cooperative ethos it embodies. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor embajador de
I
Brasil.
thank the Ambassador of Brazil.
Informo que aún quedan varias intervenciones en la
There are
lista
still a
de
number
esta
of
sesión.
speakers remaining on my list for this
Por la
meeting.
anuencia de los miembros del
I intend,
Consejo,
with the concurrence of members of the
suspenderé
Council,
la
to
misma
suspend this
hasta
meeting
las 15 horas.
until 3 p.m.
Se suspende la sesión.
The meeting is suspended.
Tom, is it?